Welcome, everyone, to yet another episode of Big Chad and Friends. I am your host, the one and only Big Chad, where on this podcast, I have musicians, artists, creative people, those who I think bring something cool, unique, and interesting to this world, and we see what makes them tick. And on today's episode, we have a friend of mine. He is a Grammy Award-winning, platinum-selling songwriter. He is a producer, an engineer, a musician, and also, honestly, a very important mentor of mine. Really taught me how to produce artists and bands, and just was a very influential person in my musical career. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome to the stage, Mr. Kevin Bowe. Kevin, sir, how are you?
Proud to be of service. One minor correction: I never won a Grammy. I wrote songs on 2 Grammy-winning albums.
Well, I'll count that.
It's no, you can't, because I remember someone wrote that about me, and I didn't say it, but some journalist got it wrong, and I got an irate email from John Bream, the lead music critic at the Star Tribune, Minneapolis.
Oh, real?
Yeah, saying you didn't win a Grammy, and I'm like, are you honestly, as a journalist, you are blaming me for the mistake of a journalist? What is wrong with you?
Well, now I kind of hope I get an angry email, because that would just be like, publicity. If it bleeds, it leads.
Right. Yeah, that's what I need. I need to kill someone who won a Grammy. Now that will get me in the news.
There we go.
No, it's a technical thing, but yeah, no, I wrote songs on a couple of records that won Grammy.
I mean, that's still, holy shit. That's fantastic. So, I always like to start off. Oh, I forgot to do I have little banners. Kevin Bowe, there he is. Look at that. Fancy schmancy. Like there.
Nice.
So I always like to start off these podcasts with a little segment that I call First Date Questions. I'm just going to hit you with a slew of goofy questions just to get to know you. And I want you to throw me the first thing that comes to your mind. Are you ready, sir?
Hit me.
Favorite food?
Pizza.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Without question.
All right. Okay. So did
you notice any hesitancy in my answer?
No, that came out like just fire.
Yeah.
What is your pizza joint then here in Minnesota? Where's your go-to?
Lola at 54th and Xerxes, is it? Yep. Very good. The Argentine pizza place, Boludo on Nicollet. They just moved from like 38th to 36th or something like that. But that's pretty hard to beat.
I've not had that one yet. I'll have to check that one out. I haven't heard of that one.
Highly recommended, my young friend.
All right.
Boludo.
All right. So to tie into favorite food, favorite beverage?
I had a killer mocktail at... Oh, I just realized mid-sentence, this is the most bourgeois thing I've probably ever said in my life.
Oh, bring it.
I had a fantastic mocktail at Suki and Mimi in Uptown the other night. But I'm a water guy.
Okay.
I'm a water guy. But I like LaCroix lime.
Oh, yeah.
Water.
LaCroix, all those bubbly waters seem like they're taking over the world.
I can fizz that all day.
I'm so looking forward to
I do. And I do.
All right. Favorite toy. There we go. Maybe
Pardon
one day.
Me.
Excuse me. That reminds me of that Wayne's World clip.
Oh, good.
Yeah, it reminds me of that Wayne's. Remember in Wayne's World where they're all like, "We don't do promos," and they're just like promoting the shit out of everything. I love that.
Yeah, big wink.
Yeah. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Favorite toy as a kid.
I think Legos and Lincoln Logs.
Oh, Lincoln Logs. I remember.
A little later, and was this? I'm sure they still had these when you were a kid. Did you ever have a wrist rocket?
Oh God, yeah. The Slingshotters.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
That's an awesome toy.
That is a very awesome toy. Not good for the pigeon population, or maybe that's a good thing. You mean either way, but wrist rockets. Actually, what me and my uncle used to do is we used to take firecrackers, light them, zing them in the air off the wrist rocket, and then you do it that way. Probably not the best call in the world, but still fun.
Yeah.
Favorite current TV show or thing you are binge watching?
Just finished Reservation Dogs on Hulu. So
things, yeah.
Good. It's a perfect show. The actors, the kids on the show are amazing. The adults are amazing. The writing, and also, I liked the music supervision on that show so much that I actually looked up who did it and went on Insta and like gave them some props on Insta, and she was like, "Thanks."
That's cool. I mean, is it? I mean, I haven't seen the show yet. I'm bad at watching TV shows. Musically, is it more like cinematic? Is it more just because I'm
No,
curious?
there's very little to no score music. It's the songs that they use.
Oh, gotcha.
You know what I mean?
Okay.
And they're all over the map, like bizarre indie rock you've never heard of, and sometimes vintage oldies. And it's but it's really clever without calling attention to itself. It's perfect music supervision.
It's amazing how much of an impact music has on the visual.
Think about The Graduate, the movie The Graduate, without those Simon and Garfunkel songs.
Oh yeah.
Or Apocalypse Now without the Doors.
Not nearly the same effect.
No. And I've been getting deeper and deeper into sync music. In other words, making music with that's intentionally aimed at film, TV shows, and commercials. And so I'm paying more and more and more attention to music supervision.
And we'll get into that a little later. That's one of my hit lists to talk about here. Let's see here. Okay, if you were to be a dog, what breed of dog would you be? I
would be a Shiba Inu, which is the dog that I currently live with.
They're adorable. My singer has 2 of them. They're like the definition of cute. You know what I mean? Like you look at them and you're just like, oh, melts the heart.
Every day.
Right?
Yeah.
First album you ever owned?
Taj Mahal, Ooh So Good in Blues. I was a white Jewish kid, so odd choice, growing up on Lake Minnetonka, and there was like a head shop / record store that was in the local mall. And I was just in there, I was 12 and I didn't know anything about anything, but there was something about the cover. Taj Mahal is a very visually interesting looking person.
Yeah.
And it was so lucky that was my first record I bought. I just bought it because the cover was cool. And it's still one of my favorite records of all time. I like a lot of Taj Mahal records. He's a blues artist who ventures into all kinds of world music and roots as the years have gone by.
Yeah.
This is just him on acoustic guitar for a lot of it. And then there's and singing. And then the backup vocals are done by the Pointer Sisters, one of whom just died. Anita Pointer just died. And the Pointer Sisters, they got famous in the late 70s and early 80s with some kind of disco-y type things and things like that. On this record, they sing like, it's almost like field hollers. It is raw, and it's an amazing record. It's not one of Taj Mahal's more popular records, but I love it still.
So random fact, my band played Pride, 7-8 years ago, and that's who we opened up for was the Pointer Sisters.
Perfect.
It was awesome.
Yeah.
So
I love everything the Pointer Sisters did myself. Oh, yeah. Then the second album I ever bought at the same store was Elton John's Captain Fantastic and the Brown Dirt Cowboy, which is another one of my favorites of all time. And again, I bought it for the cover because it's an amazing cover. And then the third album I ever bought was There Goes Rhymin' Simon, another by Paul Simon, another one of my favorite records of all time. I've been doing a deep dive on that one again recently. And then it went downhill from there for a few years. I will admit.
No, it's funny because obviously everyone streams nowadays, and but I distinctly remember buying multiple records simply based on the cover art.
Sure.
It just sucks you in, and it's kind of a sad lost art nowadays. But it is. I've discovered some bands that I loved, and
some that you didn't.
Yeah, that's a fact. Yeah. So outside of music, what do you enjoy doing? What are some of your favorite activities, hobbies outside of the music world?
I lead I think over time I've managed to, as you get older, time becomes more important than anything. I don't like to spend time doing things that I don't like to do, obligations, whatever. So I've managed to kind of focus and streamline my life so that it's very rare that I'm spending time doing something I don't want to do. Mm-hmm. And my list of things that I like doing is short. I like music, I like hanging out with my family and my dog.
Mhm.
And I like walking. I like biking.
Oh, you're a biker. That's cool.
Yeah. Um, uh, and I like reading books and watching great TV shows and films. And that's everything after that is not
Just
much.
yeah.
Not much.
I'm like it's the little simple things that just bring comfort and joy. Just family time and I finally got to see. I have a brand new nephew, so over Christmas I got to go see my baby nephew, and it just filled my heart with. We were doing nothing, just hanging out with the baby on my lap, and it was just pure joy. First instrument you ever owned?
Well, my dad had a very cheap Spanish guitar, like a gut string
Yeah.
guitar. Not great. And that was lying around the house. And that's the first thing I got. And then the first thing I bought was I got from that same record store / bong shop. They had a few guitars sitting around too. And I bought a used kind of a Fender Strat copy.
Okay.
Piece of garbage, just garbage. But that was my first electric guitar. And then I started saving money to buy a Les Paul.
That's a hell of a head shop, man. If they got records and paraphernalia and guitars, like that sounds like a glorious store.
One stop.
Yeah.
They had pretty much everything you need. And that's just the stuff that was out. Who knows what was under the counter?
Who knows? Yeah. All right, final first date question. What would people be surprised to find on your playlist? Now, I know you, and you just listen to a ton of stuff and are super eclectic, but still, there's got to be something where someone would look and be like, oh.
Well, I love disco, like classic 70s disco.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of that. I love soft rock of the 70s, like Bread.
Okay.
Yeah, just amazing music. I like some super dorky kind of 70s prog rock. I love Yes. I love Wishbone Ash.
Okay.
A lot of bands. These are like critically maligned bands. I love when Taylor Swift started going pop and working with Max Martin and Never Ever Getting Back Together. Those things.
Yeah.
Love that. Love Sia. And I love a ton of late 60s and early to mid 70s funk, R&B, soul. Like Sly and the Family Stone and all the offshoots of that, like Graham Central Station.
Yep.
And the Ohio Players and early Kool and the Gang and things like that.
That's awesome. So now what is your preferred, I'm just curious, method of listening to music nowadays? I mean, obviously streaming's taken over, but there's still people who love to throw on a vinyl. What is your preferred method of listening?
I do it always. I'm not really a vinyl guy. I just don't have time. But I listen to it all different ways. I still have, iTunes on this laptop I'm talking to you on right now. And I still, for music that I know I want to listen to for the rest of my life, I usually like to have an MP3 on something.
Yeah.
But for discovering new music, then I'll go to the streaming services.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of a game changer. I mean, it's opened my world up to so many different bands and artists. The streaming thing, I feel guilty using it because I know it really severely undercuts the artist. But at the same time, I've found so many cool artists that I give support to as a result of. So it's kind of like it's like a double-edged sword almost,
Yeah, it is. Definitely. I couldn't agree more.
So, well, that concludes our first date question segment with Kevin Bowe. So now let's get into it. So music, obviously, hugely important in your life, but was there a specific event or something that lit that initial fire of like, oh, damn, music?
I think my story is pretty common for people my age. When I was in grade school and junior high, the only thing that mattered was how popular you were. And the only thing that affected 90% of what affected how popular you were was how good you were at sports. So I wasn't popular because I wasn't good at sports. I was a bookworm kid and quiet. And two things happened. Once I remember there was this kind of not rainy, but cloudy, maybe early fall day. And for some reason, my dad took us to this, like, I wouldn't call it a festival, some kind of like backyard party thing, very low key, very poorly attended, behind a church.
Oh,
and it's probably to raise money for the church or something.
yeah.
And they had this rock band playing. And I remember this guy was fronting the rock band, and he had this early 70s thing going on of like super tight bell-bottom corduroys and a t-shirt that didn't cover up the bottom of his stomach.
Yeah.
And you getting a picture here?
Very, very, I'm thinking, very, oh my God.
Almost Famous.
Yeah. Okay.
Almost Famous. Okay.
Yeah.
And he was kind of looked like a dork, but I thought the guitar was so cool. And then he had one of those, I don't know if you remember, for a while in the 70s into the 80s, they had this company, Custom, Kustom, and the amps had like car padding around them, like the back seat.
I recently just sold a collection of them, so yes, I know exactly what you're talking about.
He was playing one of those, and I was like, I don't even know what that is, but that's cool. So that was one moment where I was like, what's this? Like the first time you're watching Star Trek as a kid and you notice that Lieutenant Uhura looks different.
Oh yeah,
the men on the show, and girls are different.
Yeah.
But then the second thing that happened is a friend of mine, a neighbor, his cousin had the album, the Who album, Live at Leeds.
Mm-hmm.
And I got really into the Who, and I noticed that Pete Townsend did not look like a male model. And he's kind of tiny, except for his nose, which is like the size of Kansas, right?
Yeah.
And I thought, I bet you he has all the girls and drugs anyone could possibly want. And it's not because he's good at playing hockey. I must investigate this.
This intrigues me. This is up my alley. Yes.
Yeah. And that album was a perfect album to learn how to play guitar on because A, it's live.
Yeah.
B, Townsend is not a complex guitar player. He's a great guitar player, but it's not like Jeff Beck. He's the opposite of a Jeff Beck.
Yeah. Yeah.
And number three, the way they mixed it, it was one of those kind of early 70s mixes before they had gotten the formula for mixing in stereo.
Yeah.
So the guitar is on one side, the bass is on the other side, and the drums and vocals are up the middle. So if you pan your Pioneer receiver all the way to the left channel, it's mostly guitar and it's live, so there's no overdubs to screw you up.
Yeah.
And I just played that all summer and played to it, and I learned how to play the guitar from that record.
I'll be damned. That's cool. All right. So the Who got you into it? I mean, in terms of, I guess, the rock star vibe. But when did you start playing in bands? Like what around what age? When did that?
Almost immediately.
Oh, really?
Yeah, before I deserved to. Of course, you want to, get guys together, to get a band together. And so, yeah, probably 14.
Oh, okay, cool. Now, so obviously, because I from Tales About You About Life, you played in bands for quite a while.
Yeah.
And it was the punk rock scene that I think was kind of more your vibe, if memory serves me correct, like that around that
After
time.
that, yeah. In high school, it was like classic rock because we didn't call it classic rock then. We just called it rock. This is what the radio is playing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was like the Who, the Stones, Joe Walsh, Little Bachman Turner Overdrive. And then in 1976, when freeform FM radio gave way to formatted AOR radio, and it kind of mainstream rock turned into corporate rock.
Yeah.
It was just much more organized and less random and less weird.
Yeah.
Look at like music from 1976, mainstream rock music. All of a sudden, it just wasn't weird, with a couple of exceptions.
Yeah.
Queen is a weird band, but most of the stuff was like Foreigner.
Yeah.
Right? Not a horrible band, but not a weird band.
Yeah.
Foreigner existed with the intent of selling platinum records, and that's what they did.
100%. Yeah.
Same with bands like Heart, or the ultimate example for me would be Journey. And that was just not my thing. I came from a place of like where KQRS in the early 70s up until 76 would play like, here's a Howlin' Wolf song, here's a Joni Mitchell song, here's a Led Zeppelin song.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Just all over the place. And so that's the way my mind works with music. So I kind of lost interest in current music and started reaching further back. And then when I got out of high school, I two big changes. I got off drugs because I'd gotten into a huge drug situation in high school. So I got clean and I moved to downtown Minneapolis, and they put me in this halfway house after rehab. And a couple of the guys in the halfway house were super into punk rock.
Mm-hmm.
It turned me on to, like, you know, the Clash, the Pistols, the Ramones, you know, and I just was like, I was born for this. It was like I was the right age at the right time. So after I got out of that halfway house, they asked me to be in their band, and I was in this band with them, you know, a silly, I guess you'd call it a new wave band. 81, I probably did that for 3 years. And that was an amazing time in Minneapolis because, you know, between 81 and 87, Minneapolis was the center of the world for music.
Yep.
Undisputed.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Prince, The Replacements, Husker Du, Soul Asylum. I mean, it was like A&R people were coming to Minneapolis to find bands to sign.
So are there any memorable gigs that for you that stick out during that time period?
Well, my punk band, you know, there was this club called the Longhorn that was just the perfect punk club. It was really great. And we used to open for the Suburbs all the time. And that was really fun because the Suburbs at that point in time were probably the best live band I've ever heard in my life. And their shows were like, I mean, it was insane. Opening for them was amazing. And we did gigs. We opened for Husker Du. We opened for The Replacements. We opened for The Replacements a couple of times in First Avenue's main room.
That's awesome.
We opened for Echo and the Bunnymen, and they at Duffy's, this other club, and they kicked us out of the green room so they could shoot up heroin. And that was pretty cool. We opened for the Wendy O. Williams and the Plasmatics.
Okay.
And the guitarist was named Richie Stotts, and he was like 6'5", and he had a blue mohawk, and he wore a little nurse's outfit.
As one should.
Yeah, right. And they would like have a chainsaw on stage and saw through guitars and stuff like that. What's that?
I said, damn, that sounds...
Yeah, it was heavy. It was heavy. It opened for like The Church and, you know, Rain Parade and stuff like that. So a lot of... And I had bands all the way through the 80s and 90s and into the 2000s. But I started as just a guitar player. And then that first punk band, one of our more popular songs was called I Don't Want to Join the Army. And then the lead singer who wrote it quit the band to join the Army.
Oh, sweet irony.
Yeah. So then I started singing, but not out of any desire, just like, well, somebody's got to do this, more of a utilitarian thing.
Yeah.
Like, okay. And I started writing songs for the same reason. It never occurred to me to write a song ever. I was like, there's plenty of songs out there. Why would you write one?
That's a perfect segue to where I'd like to go, because songwriting, that's, you know, a massive strength of yours in terms of, so did it, I guess my question, I think you already kind of answered, is like, what spawned the want to write songs? What was it?
Necessity.
Just necessity. Oh, interesting.
Didn't really want to, had to, because songs are something that your band needs to play.
Yeah.
And so then after I did it it wasn't like my first several songs I wrote weren't very good at all. And then slowly over time, I got better at it. And then when it really kind of knocked me over the head is when, I was doing this gig. I met this woman. She was the original owner of the Fine Line Music Cafe.
Mm-hmm.
So I used to get gigs because we were together. And then she sold out her interest in that. She'd become friends with Prince because Prince loved the Fine Line. When it first opened, he played there and hung out there, and she always took care of him and stuff. And so when she sold out of the Fine Line, Prince called her and said, I want you to build me a club because I love what you did at the Fine Line. So she built him a club called Glam Slam. So I used to get sweet opening gigs there because we were married. and one time I was playing there with my band, and there's this Uber producer, David Rivkin, in the audience, and he was hanging out with my wife, and he said, wow, I really like this guy, this cool band, you know, cool songs or whatever. I'd like to meet him. And she said, oh, that's my husband. I'll introduce you. So he was such a big deal at the time. I mean, several platinum records, Prince, you know, Purple Rain, co-wrote Kiss with Prince, did that Fine Young Cannibals record and won producer of the year, record of the year Grammy. He was such a big deal. He had an office at Paisley Park.
Oh,
his own office. So he called me to go visit him there and like play me some of his songs, on cassette or DAT or whatever it was. And he took one of those. Well, he gave me this talk. He basically said, in somewhat, but not that much more polite language that I'm using, you're not very good and your band isn't very good, but your songs are good. And if someone younger, better looking, and more talented than you was singing them, you could make some real money, kid. And I was like, I didn't know what publishing was or anything. I was kind of like, thank you.
You're like, I think that was a compliment.
Yeah, I'm not sure. But so I gave him a tape of some of the songs, and he used one on this. Just like right after that, he went to Memphis, and he produced the debut album by Kenny Wayne Shepherd, and he used this weird song I had written on the album. And he calls me up. He goes, "Kevin, we're gonna cut your song. Nobody can figure out how to play it. The guitar part. We're gonna cut it without guitar, and I'm gonna send you the tape, the 24-track tape, up to Minneapolis, and you put your guitar on it. But you got to do it exactly the same." And I was like, I can't. And he goes, why not? And I said, because I ran it direct through a quadriverb and doubled it. And like, you can't use a quadriverb on a major label album.
Yeah.
Like, the hell you can't. I want you to do it exactly the same. And it's like, first of many, many big lessons I learned from David Z. Sounds good is good. I did it exactly the same. I took my Telecaster, plugged it into my quadriverb on there was a patch on there called 12-string, where it has a chorus effect that turns your 6-string into a 12-string. And I put it through that, and then I doubled it, and I was using a alternate tuning. It wasn't anything heavy. It was just drop the A string to a G.
Yeah.
Enough to throw them off the scent, so they couldn't figure out how to do it. Ha ha. So I laid the tracks down and sent it back to him, and the record came out and went platinum. And that's when I realized that he was right. Other people should be singing my song.
But that's cool, because not only A, you wrote it, and B, you got to play on it. I mean, that was
cool.
That's sweet. So was that your first paid gig as a songwriter?
Yeah.
That's cool. Oh,
and
man.
then shortly after that, I got lucky, and I had a gig in Fargo, and a 13-year-old kid was on the opening slot, Johnny Lang, and we got to be friends. And he thought I was a big deal because I had written for Kenny Wayne Shepherd, and I realized quickly during sound check that this guy was going to be way bigger than Kenny Wayne Shepherd. And I hooked him up with David Z and wrote a bunch of songs with Johnny, and I got a bunch of songs on his first album called Lie to Me, and a bunch more songs on his second album called Wanted This World, including a top 5 single. And so David and I since have worked on many things together, Etta James and a bunch of other things. And he's just been a really great music pal.
I'm curious with your songwriting. So, I mean, and maybe it's a combination of both. Is it you writing a song essentially from start to finish and pitching it, or writing with people to come up with something? Or what's your methodology, I guess, behind songwriting?
Either, both.
Okay.
I think the latter is more common for obvious reasons, especially as the music business revenue has shrunk. Artists are more interested than ever in co-writing. And, we have a joke. Sometimes it's co-writing and sometimes it's co-writing, because sometimes the artist isn't really much of a writer. A lot of times they are, what I mean? Sometimes if it's like a 14-year-old kid, then they're probably not a super prolific writer. Yeah. But even then, sometimes they are, but sometimes they're not. But they've figured out, one, they will appear to be more of an organic, real artist if it looks like they write their own songs. Two, their manager taught them what publishing is, and they want some of the money. Which, who can blame them these days? Because they're certainly not going to make any money selling records. No, the money has to come from somewhere. Yeah. So mostly it's co-writing, which I love to do. It doesn't bother me a bit. And then as the years went on, I moved into producing. So then it's great because you can kind of be like, I don't know. I always say, if you're in a room and maybe there's an artist and another writer, another producer, or a mixer, or a beat person, whatever, I just sit in the empty chair. Yeah. You know what I mean? I was like, oh, nobody's here to do lyrics. I'll be lyric boy. Yeah. Or nobody's here to do the beat. I'll be beat boy. Yeah. I can do any of it, some better than others, but yeah. Well, the starting to produce thing was also a total accident.
which I'm going to get into too. You're setting me up, Kevin. I'm throwing you balls, just knocking them. But I'm curious to know a little bit more, because I remember you specifically even saying that in class. Like, sounds good is good. Don't question it. What were some other, I guess, key lessons that maybe shaped or changed the way you approach songwriting?
Songwriting?
Yeah.
I think there's a few people that have influenced me in songwriting way more than others. One was a guy named Costas that I worked with quite a bit in Nashville in the 90s and maybe into the 2000s. And he was, with that moment of a few years in the 90s when country music was kind of awesome again.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of Steve Earle and the Mavericks, and Dwight Yoakam. And they were doing some pretty risky stuff, and it was actually selling.
Yeah.
Trisha Yearwood, anyway, this guy wrote a lot of that stuff. He wrote Timber, I'm Falling in Love for Patty Loveless, which was his first cut. And he wrote Crying Shame for the Mavericks, which is amazing. And Dwight Yoakam things and Dixie Chicks and stuff. And somehow my publisher got me in to write with him. And we got along really well and wrote a bunch of stuff. We wrote a song that Etta James cut. And he just kind of took me under his wing and told me some great things. And one time I was struggling over a line because I was still in the mind. Like when I first started writing music, I thought I have to write it has to be a chord that nobody's ever used before. It has to be something that nobody's ever done before. And then you realize nobody ever said, I'm going to go buy that single because I love those chords.
Yeah.
No, people listen to melody and lyric.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Chords are nothing. So same with words. I was struggling over this line and Costas looked at me and he goes, no, man, just say it. And for some reason, the way he said it, it just echoed in my head and I've never forgotten it, because now I'm not afraid. If I'm in a song and my character in the song loves her, he's going to say, I love you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't have to say, oh, I cherish, I treasure, blah, 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 blah. I just say it. And that really that was one that had a big impression. Another one was Paul Westerberg, who was my first introduction to songwriting. Like, why do I love this band, The Replacements, so much? It's not because they're good, because in a way they weren't good, but in a way they were perfect without being good.
Yeah.
Or great without being perfect. I don't know. But I realized for the first time it wasn't about guitar sound and blah, blah, blah. It was that the songs he was writing. And I remember I used to hang out with Paul back then. We were both probably 20. And I asked him one time, it was embarrassing, but I was like, how do you write songs like that? And he goes, man, you're a funny guy. You just got to write like you talk. And it took me it wasn't until 7 years later that I figured out what he was talking about. But the minute I figured it out, I started writing platinum records. So
now as a songwriter, and obviously you work with a lot of other songwriters and we'll get more to the production factor as well. What do you think up and coming or new songwriters do wrong? Like, have you noticed not a cliche, but have you noticed maybe something consistent to where shouldn't be doing this? This is more so what you should be doing. It's kind of just maybe a tip to aspiring songwriters out there even.
I would say, don't try to write with the intent of pleasing others. Write something that you think is truly great and concentrate on that. I think there are very few people in the world who can tell what the masses are going to like.
Yeah.
Clive Davis knew what people would like.
Yeah.
He was a genius at it. But you know what? You ain't Clive Davis, and neither am I. And so a lot of people are just too clever for their own good. They think, they imitate something they hear on the radio, and they think they're trying to get over.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Don't try and get over. Just try and write something that you think is great. And the other thing I would say is, it's so easy to make a great beat these days and make a great track. and it has been for a long time. Don't be fooled into thinking that a great track means the song is great, and don't be fooled into thinking just because if you're a great singer or you're writing with a great singer, that just because they're a great singer, that the song is great. Not the case.
Yeah, I remember, again, this is another another pearls of wisdom that you dropped on me was like, a great song is a great song. It could be recorded with Dixie cup and string, and if it's a great song, it's going to hold its value.
I do like the Dixie cup and string bit.
Yeah, that one, the hardcore stuck with me. And then another one, it was kind of like a combination of, is like you said, there's no money above the 5th fret, and all you need to tell is a story. And so in honor of that, I named one of my bands 4-Chord Story.
That's a good, I like that. Plus that, because you've got that internal rhyme of 4-chord story.
Yeah.
I really like that.
Well, thank you. That's that was a Kevin Bowe, pearls of wisdom seeping through me in that regard. So obviously you made the transition to producing and engineering. Now, was that out of necessity as well, or what sparked that?
It was, the first thing to do is I always told myself, people like David Z, who's a great engineer, and all those people who knew how to work the mics and the boxes and stuff like that. I was always like, well, they're unicorns, and I'm just a horse. You know what I mean? They're telling myself I couldn't do it. I'm not that guy. You got to stop doing that. Otherwise, you aren't that guy if you tell yourself that you're not. Mm-hmm. But I started you have to make cool sounding demos to entice people to cut your songs. Yeah. They don't have to be full on studio things, but they have to have something about them so that they go, oh, and so I was writing for Johnny Lang's second record. Mm-hmm. And my studio was like a Fostex 8-channel hard disk recorder. It sounded like horrible. It sounded horrible. Like just awful. Those early, hard disk recorders like that. Awful. And an Alesis HR16 drum machine. I don't know if you're probably too young to remember those, but they were just awful. And then in a quadraverb, and then a couple of like leftover stage mics. Uh-huh. And so I did this demo though of a song that Johnny and I had written together called, what was it called? The Levee. And it was super cool. I made a loop with the HR16 and I ran it through. I had this DBX compressor. Mm-hmm. Smashed it with that, and then I made a echo of it that went in time, a time synced, manually time synced echo. Yeah. And it was cool, and the guitars were really cool. So it was super lo-fi, but it was really cool. And we were making this record. Then they called me in. We're going to cut one of your songs today. I'm like, ooh, I'm so excited. And Steve Cropper is on guitar, the guy who wrote "Sitting on the Dock of the Bay" with Otis Redding and played guitar, and the white guy who played guitar in Booker T and the MGs. I mean, he's like invented soul guitar. Yeah. When the Blues Brothers album, when he goes, "Play it, Steve," that's Steve Cropper. Yeah. I mean, he's the guy. And the drummer from Little Feat, who's now passed away, was on drums, one of my favorite drummers of all time. And so this all-star cast is there. And this is back in the day when it's like, okay, what should we cut today? Here's a box of tapes. We'll listen. Nobody cared about time. The budget was insane, right? Yeah. And they put in my little DAT or cassette or whatever, and they played this song, and it sounded cool. And then there was this silence, and Steve Cropper looks up and goes, well, we can record it, but we're never going to beat that demo. That's what I did. That's what I said. And I was like, for the first time, it dawned on me that maybe I could do this. Maybe just screwing around in the studio and making stuff that's cool. Maybe that's what producing is.
Yeah.
And so I set up a little crappy studio shortly after that and got one of these new things called a website. And I lied. And I said, I'm a producer. I'm ready to work with artists. And some kid hit me up from Oklahoma, and he's like, I want to be the next Johnny Lang. And he was only 18, but he had the wherewithal to fly his little 18-year-old butt up here to Minneapolis to work with me, which I was kind of impressed by. Yeah. And we wrote 4 songs, and we did a little demos of them. We got him signed to this crappy little indie deal, some record company out of New Jersey. And they gave us a budget to make the record. And then I'm sitting in Dick Shopto's home studio, and we've got Stevie Ray Vaughan's band in there. And Stevie Ray Vaughan's band is looking at me going, okay, Mr. Producer, what do you want us to play? I'm like, how the hell would I know what you're supposed to play? You're Stevie, you're Double Trouble.
Yeah.
So we did that record, and then it's not a great record. That's got its moments, but at the end of the record, it's like it says produced by Kevin Bowe. So I wasn't lying anymore.
That's a cool story. I did not know that one. That one was pretty okay. So then at that point in time, did you just get business because of that?
No, I hustled, I worked writing and producing. And then I think I was producing, but I wasn't really doing my own engineering or mixing. Nick Shopto did that.
Yep.
And then I got another great mistake. This guy who managed the Meat Puppets hit me up, and he's like, they just recorded an album, but they don't want the guy who recorded it to mix it or something. And, that's what you do, right? And so what did I say?
Yes, that's what they got.
Another. And I said, yeah, mix records all the time. That's what I do. Kevin Bowe, I mix records. And so he's like, okay, cool. I can give you this much money. And I'm like, cool, done. And the minute I got off the phone, I call up Colt Lieb, who I was working with at IPR.
Yeah.
I was like almost crying, like, Colt, I am in such trouble. I got him way over my head. Will you split this with me and do it with me? And he said, of course, this sounds great. Let's do it. And during the course of that record, kind of like Colt started out as Steve Hodges' edit boy.
Yeah.
And then he kind of learned how to mix from Hodge, right?
Yeah.
Simplifying, but you get the idea. I was the edit boy on that record, and watching and Colt showed me how to mix doing that Meat Puppets record.
So Colt was your catalyst, I guess, into the mixing world and knowledge.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Cool. I learned from other people after him, but that was the moment. I mean, he's really smart. He's really good at what he does, and he's really good at explaining how and why he does it.
Yeah.
No,
I always loved Colt as an instructor, and I learned so much from him. Kind of everyone from that school was just hugely influential in terms of, at least for me personally, but
I was lucky to have known him.
Yeah.
Was
there any major takeaways from, I mean, obviously you learned a ton, but was there like any tips or tricks that like still weigh heavy on your head of like, oh yeah, Colt did this and this is why I do this? Or
well, let's put Colt and Hodge in a box together because they have so much overlap. But learning to not compress something just with one compressor, compress at different points during the making of the record and the mixing, whether it's like compress it a little bit as you record it, and then a little bit on the individual track, and then a little bit on the bus that it's going into, the bus group, and then a little bit on the master. That concept. And I still think my basic bus architecture is 90% of the way that I learned how to do it from Colt.
Mm-hmm.
Like how I flow the kick drums into a mono kick aux, and then that into the drum bus, and then maybe another couple of drum buses now I use for like a dirty one, or I use a clean one for the overheads and other things that I don't want to compress. But all that is from that's from Colt.
That is so funny because I do the same stuff in the same way because of Colt. Oh, that's fun. Oh man, that's crazy. So then so obviously, you learn from Colt and you learn from Steve Hodge. I mean, what better mentors into the mix world?
Then also David Z, once I kind of figured out what was going on, what the board was doing, working with him, I could learn from what he was doing. And then the last few years I've been working with this band in Pittsburgh, and Vance Powell in Nashville mixes all the records. And so I've gotten to go to Nashville and hang with Vance as he's mixing, and you want to talk about someone who's great at teaching. I don't know if you've ever watched any of his Pure Mix tutorials, but he's, besides being a phenomenal mixer, one of the top guys in the world right now, he is so good at explaining how he does it and why he does it,
mm-hmm.
and what this does and what that does. I've learned a ton from him.
That's awesome. I mean, it's such.
And I learned from you to
Oh,
not have the overhead so loud.
that's my claim to fame, is that Kevin Bowe uses something that I
Well,
brought up.
wait, there's more.
Uh-oh.
PZM's on the piano lid.
Oh yeah.
That's a Chad for me.
Oh, I am honored that I have instilled some bit of knowledge.
I still do it. That's the way
Awesome.
I record piano, because in my home here, I have a great baby grand, Kawhi baby grand upstairs, but it's in a non-studio room.
Yeah.
And I throw those PZMs under the lid, and it's like, thank you, Chad.
That's awesome.
Every time.
Oh, that makes me so happy to hear. So now, we've gone from songwriting to producing to mixing. But when did you start feeling, I want to say the term brave enough, but I guess brave enough to start doing your own engineering as well? I'm talking about mic placement, mic choices, pre-choices, stuff like that. Was that around the same time as mixing, or did that come later? Or when did the engineering element kind of break its way for you?
I think when I first started teaching that class at IPR, the all-day engineering, or not engineering, producing class, you and me worked together. Or no, that's right. I had that Ben was before you, and then you, right?
Yeah.
And so, but Ben I only worked with him for a quarter or two, right?
I think so.
Yeah, not very long. Really, the process of teaching that class with you was me. I was teaching how to produce, but I was learning how to engineer.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? You saw that.
Oh, yeah.
And by the time I taught that class for maybe 2 or 3 years, then I felt totally confident, because, you get in these patterns. It's like, I know I'm going to use that D12 on the kick, and this on the snare, and blah, blah, blah. And so after teaching that class for a couple of years, I was pretty confident. But then the next thing is, setting up your own home studio so that you can do what you do, whether it's in your home or not is immaterial. But and that's a whole nother thing then, of like making your room work for you, so that you have this machine within you and without you, so that you can make things sound like the music in your head.
Yep.
And there's so much to that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's cool. I mean, that's the one thing I loved about teaching, and I still miss about teaching, is like, as much as I was teaching, I was learning. It was such a cool concept.
I miss the learning, but to be honest, brutally honest, I don't miss teaching.
Really? Okay.
No, I know that it turns out I was good at it by accident, because Tom Tucker just hired me because we were friends.
Yeah.
You know what I mean, I didn't even finish college myself, for God's sake. But the kids liked me and I liked them. But I wasn't born to be a teacher. It was never a dream of mine. I much prefer learning.
Mm.
But I don't know. I just got a call today, actually, the nicest message. I put out this new single and video off of a new album that I have coming out in a few weeks. And it's called California Sober, and people are reacting surprisingly well to it. I just did it during COVID because I was bored.
Yeah.
I was never going to make another record of my own stuff again. I'm my own worst client. There's no reason to do this, but COVID made us do weird things. I did a lot of weird stuff. I started miking the bottom of the rack and floor tom as well as the top during COVID. That's COVID.
That's bold.
That's COVID.
Yeah.
It's like a man with too much time on his hands, right?
Actually, I've done that a few times. Let me ask you this. Was it Garneau that taught you that one? Because you taught it to me.
No, it was COVID that taught me. I'm bored. I upgraded my mics for the top of the snare, and I had this leftover Sennheiser clip on. I was like, oh, I can just put it down there. I wonder what that sounds like. Throw them on a phase, and it's like, hey, that's cool.
Yeah.
So, but I put out this single, and I just got this nice message from this guy who, a very successful producer engineer here in town, who owns his own studio, really nice place. And I knew him a little bit. And he said, I have a song I want to bring over to you because I want to learn how to mix the way you mixed your song.
Oh. And
I was like, damn, that's so nice. So of course I'm going to do it for him.
Yeah. Oh, that's
so that was cool.
It's just, I don't know. It's fun because I think I was there at that transitional point.
Totally.
Where you started getting into the mixing and the engineering part of it. Like I didn't really, that was just an epiphany that hit me right now. It's like, holy shit. I was kind of learning this stuff with Kevin at the same time as I was going through it, like,
and teaching, because you were more experienced at that side for sure than me when we were working together. I was definitely experienced as a producer, but not as an engineer. So I was faking it. You know what I mean? And that's why I was so concerned at IPR about who they were going to hook me up with.
Oh,
and, and who was that person going to be qualified? Because I knew that they were going to have to be more qualified than me in that regard. And then over the years, I got to the point where they said, you don't get a helper anymore. And I was like, yeah, I don't care.
Yeah. Those were fun times. I mean, I think we not only did I think it was a good tag team effort between our knowledge bases, but I love that we were not hesitant to give each other shit and enjoy just the bantering. And
essential if you're going to be on a session with me, it has to be funny. If you ain't funny, I'm not interested.
God, I remember this one moment. I don't know if you remember this, but we were cutting something and we had this one guitar. It was one kind of country slide guitar player and it was some record. And at that time, like a tour came in. It was like a younger, like son and daughter or something like that or whatever. And the guy just nailed this take. And over the microphone, he's like, man, I fucked that take harder than a Catholic pussy or something like that. And like they heard it in the back of the room and both you and I looked at each other. And we're like, oh.
Oh my God, I remember that. Yeah, I remember that. And then we also, sometimes you and me would be laughing because we had some absolutely horrible bands that were like unintentional self-parody level ridiculousness.
I remember the one there. I mean, I don't know what else to call it other than a vanity project, but that's what it was. And I'm not going to drop names maybe because I don't remember, but I just distinctly remember just some of the goofy shit, like putting sleigh bells on ankles and dancing around.
Oh, that guy. Oi, oi, oi. That guy about put me in an early grave.
I remember you were not happy during that.
I was very unhappy. That guy, I've never done this before, and I'll probably never do it again. At the end of the record, I told him, because he had controlled the process so much, besides wanting to do all this silly stuff. And he wasn't even a music fan. He owned like 2 Beatles records, and he just decided, I want to make a record. He couldn't play, he couldn't sing, he couldn't write. But at the end of the record, I said, he was so controlling of the process and didn't take any of my advice that I said, I'm not going to let you put my name on this record as producer. You can put engineered by Kevin Bowe, but you can't put produced because I didn't produce it. You did.
Mm-hmm.
And then this is equally funny. He was so upset because he thought if I didn't say produced by Kevin Bowe that nobody would buy it. And I didn't know how to tell him, you could put produced by Jesus H. Christ on this record and still nobody's going to buy it. But I just said, nope. And he goes, well, how about if I pay you more? Can I use your name, then? And I'm like, how much more?
Yeah.
So he gave me like more money, and I'm like, yeah, fine. I produced it, baby. No problem. And then he did a big expensive video for the record, and then he never even released it.
Are you serious? He never released it?
Never released it. Don't know why.
Well, I mean, hell, you got paid. Who cares at that point in time?
Yeah, but I don't, as you get older, time becomes more important. In some ways, money becomes a little less important because hopefully you're doing well enough where you've actually made some money, but you can't make more time. So I'm pretty good at filtering those things out now. You know what I mean? So if at the end of a project, all I have is the money, I might have been okay with that then. I'm less okay with that now just because I don't want to waste. I told, like at the beginning of this interview, I don't like spending time doing stuff that I don't want to do.
No, that makes total sense. And besides, I mean, you're at a point in your career where it's like you can afford to be picky in who you want to work with.
Depends on the year. Things go up and down, but I can afford more often. You know what it is? That I have more faith that like the phone's going to ring. I get months where the phone, a month where the phone doesn't ring, and of course those voices start creeping in your head. You're like, oh, I'm done. Everyone thinks I suck. But over time, it's like the phone always rings again. Always rings again. If you do good work and you're fun to be with, and you make people feel good when they're around you, the phone will ring.
Well, that was another huge element that I took away from you is just creating the vibe of a good time, and the vibe of that. It's like
the illusion of a good time.
Yeah. Well, hey, but it's like, because like I think I forget how you put it, but you told me one time like something along the lines of like the artist they get a record, but they walk away with an experience or with something to that extent. And that really kind of like
more so now,
yeah,
ever, because there's less money, like directly related to record sales. So most of the people who are making records now, they're making it because they want to make a record. Nobody's getting into the music business thing. Hey, I'll make a quick killing here.
Yeah.
That's not a thing. So then therefore, if it's not for the glory and the sales and stuff like that, it's for the experience of making the record. So it's important to have your head out of your ass enough to look at them and say, what's the experience that they need?
Yeah.
Do they want to hear stories about me working for Etta James or the Replacements, or do they totally not want to hear that? Because some people, if you don't give them that kind of like, Rock and Roll Hall of Fame crap, then they feel ripped off, like you didn't care. And then there's other people, you just got to be able to read the room where like they want it to be only about the music. They don't want the rock and roll theme park, So just knowing what they want and being humble enough to remember that the whole record making experience should be defined by what they want.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If what they want is to completely screw up their record, hopefully you can trick them out of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Using smoke and mirrors and a good argument or a good lie or whatever. I think we got this vocal, but let's do one more just to see what happens. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But knowing people, like some people, they need to be like built up.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? And like, no, that was really great. That was really great. And then there's other people that are super cocky, so you have to be kind of with approval withholding. Otherwise, they don't give you their best. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So they'll do a take, and they go, "How is that?" And you go, "It was good.
We should probably get another."
Yeah, it was good. He's like that. You know what I mean? And just knowing without even thinking about it. These aren't things I think about when I'm making a record. It's just automatic now. Just making sure like that your head is where their head is.
Yeah. Because I think one of the better compliments that I've gotten wasn't that like the record sounds great or whatever the case is. It's that was a great time making that record. Like
I had the time of my life.
Exactly. That's almost to me more valuable than creating an amazing sounding record is creating an amazing experience for
and
that.
I don't think you can separate the two.
True.
Because you know what I mean? One obviously leads to the other.
Yeah.
That's more important now than ever, I think.
Huge. So now I want to nerd out a little bit here and talk some gear.
Okay.
What would you say in your home studio that you have top 3 favorite pieces of outboard gear? Meaning we can go microphones, we can go pre's, we can go compressors. What are your top 3 favorite toys that you have right now?
I think I'm still madly in love with my relatively new ATC 25A monitors.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that was a big change. I got them 3 years ago, and people say, "Oh, a real game changer." I mean, this is like a world changer. I could never really be totally confident that I could tell what was going on in the bottom end of my mixes until I got the ATCs.
Do you have a sub paired with it, or are they just able to produce that much low end?
They are, and yeah, I've never been a sub guy.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. Right. So that's one. And it's funny, I just had an affair on this microphone, and it only made me realize how much I love it, and I was taking it for granted. I have this, the first truly, truly great vocal mic I ever got is this Sound Deluxe Bach 251.
Yeah.
And I've had it forever. And I had a chance to do a long-term loan. I borrowed one of the reissue U67s recently, and I thought this is going to be so much better than my mic, because my mic is only worth $4 or $5 and this mic is worth $9, so it should be, by my maths, twice as good.
Yeah,
idiot. So I got the U67 in here, and it's a wonderful mic. It's great. Did I like it more than the 251? No. It was about the same, a little brighter, but about the same.
Yeah.
And so I just sent it back today to the person I borrowed it from. And so that 251 has earned its place back into my all-time favorites. And then let's see. I'm gonna have to give a couple of things.
Oh, shout them out.
I really like these new Neve the pre's. Jason Orris at Terrarium made me buy. It's two of them in one. It's got EQ.
Warm audio or
no? It's a real Neve.
Oh,
1073 DPX.
Oh, the 1073s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The knobs are crappy quality, but the EQ and the guts of it and everything sounds amazing. Amazing. Love that. Love my APIs. I must have like up to about 10 of those. Just great. Distressors. And I just got a really weird 2-channel spring reverb that I put in my rack. That's really from that. I think it's from the 80s. That's pretty cool.
That's
yeah, those kinds of things. I got an 1176 that I like a lot. Oh, I know one thing. Crane Song. No, normally I don't think I'm myself as someone who could afford a lot of what they make, but I got this. Remember that in Master Mix we had that Summit. What was that Summit compressor? We had two of them.
Oh yeah. The I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, TLA 100.
100. Yeah.
Legendary piece. So the guy who designed those for Summit, he's the guy who does Crane Song.
Oh.
Dave, what's his face, up in Superior, Wisconsin.
Yeah.
And he made a little 500 series version, to my ears anyway, of the Summit TLA 100 called Falcon, Crane Song Falcon.
Okay, yeah, I've heard about this. Yeah.
And it's not too expensive. It was like $600-700 or something like that. And I love that thing. It's a tube compressor and it works very similarly to the TLA 100.
What's your go-tos to run through it?
Bass and vocals, acoustic guitars.
Nice.
Yeah. That thing's cool.
So now plugin world, because I just got some new fun plugins. What are some of your favorites?
First.
Okay. So I what's the company? My brain just checked out. So I picked up some fun wave stuff. The CLA for like aggressive music, the CLA bass, the Chris Lord-Alge bass one, it gets the bass tone that I've heard in my head for years that I've never been able to achieve. Like that one's awesome. And then another one that I use on damn near everything is by a company called Kazrog. I think I'm pronouncing it right.
True Iron?
True Iron. It does something that just tickles my fancy. It just a little excitement.
And it's subtle.
Yes, but it does something, and it just makes me happy.
Those distortion plugins that are not subtle are very. I don't have a use for them very often, and if I do, it's like, oh great, I got Sans Amp or whatever. But the subtle ones are the ones like True Iron or Decapitator can be subtle. And I have a million of things like that I really like. But that True Iron is super cool. A lot of people love that plugin.
Yeah.
True Iron. You see people raving about it.
Let's see. What else did I get recently that I really liked? So I've been more so recently kind of experimenting with like EDM style music. And I found this plugin, I think it's called Sub Something by Waves or Submarine something. And it's just really helping my low end in that style of music not get too muddy, but still hit you in the gut.
Which is challenging.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And so it's just like a low.
And you need a really great monitoring environment.
Which I don't have. And I fully admit that because it's kind of because I mix in my apartment. So it's kind of difficult to judge the low end without getting bangs on my walls from my neighbors.
Yeah, right.
But having this guy's definitely helped architect my low end for that style of music, at least.
That's cool.
I'm brain farting right now. I bought a handful of things that were just really awesome
on the Black Friday sales.
Yeah, there's some out there.
Yeah, I did a little action too.
Oh yeah, Waves was like it was like a 3-day sale, but it's phenomenal. So I was like, damn it, just take my money. Like
they're giving that stuff away.
They really are nowadays. Yeah. I've fallen in love with Steven Slate stuff.
All I have is Trigger.
Trigger's awesome, but like
I don't have any of his plug-in plugins.
Like I almost use him for coloration more than anything else. Like because he's got his Neve stuff, which I really like. I really like how his version of his distressor reacts on percussive elements, which is fantastic.
So many of my friends have all of his stuff and they love it. I just
Yeah,
don't have it.
and I wasn't using it, and then I was like on a whim, I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna dink around on the mix and only use Slate stuff. And I was like,
Good
oh,
idea.
huh?
Good idea to
Yeah.
to challenge yourself like that.
Yeah. I'll go through phases where it's like, you know what, I'm gonna do a mix with plugins I've never used before or I rarely use, and either I'll fall in love with something new or be like, oh yeah, that's why I didn't use it.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
That's
And
smart.
then, but I still have to say, my favorite toy that I have, even though I've had it for several years now, is my Fractal Audio Axe Effects.
Oh yeah.
I've not recorded an actual amp, Kevin, in 4 years.
You know who's had one of those over here? It was a couple of years ago now, 2-3 years ago. But Corey Wong showed
Oh, yeah.
those for a session and kind of walked me through it, and it was super cool.
Just the convenience and the versatility of it. Now, is there a difference between a vintage tube amp and this? I'm sure there is. I'm not denying that. Can I hear it? I don't think my ears are trained well enough still yet to hear that major of a difference, but like,
Who cares?
but when you're layering drums and bass and all this other stuff over it, like I'm shit. I mean, just the convenience factor of it.
Oh yeah.
Is just easy. But like, I really had that epiphany like a couple weeks ago. It's like, dude, you haven't mic'd an amp in years and you're okay with this. I used to be that guy. It's like, no, we got to use amps. There's nothing like it.
Well,
Now,
I have, good is good.
yeah,
Sounds good is good.
yeah.
I use fake amps all the time. I still use real amps too. But my stuff's all set up and mic'd up and ready to go. So it's really not any more convenient for me to use a fake amp than a real one.
And I think if I was in your situation to where I had that lovely convenience factor, I would probably use real amps more. But like,
Well, for a lot of like current pop music and stuff like that, I prefer the sound
true.
of a plugin. But plugin wise, I have the Plugin Alliance, the whole subscription.
Oh yeah.
And, I think one thing I like about it is they're constantly coming out with new stuff, and it's just exciting.
Yep.
But I really do use a lot of their meat and potato stuff, like a lot of EQs and compressors and things like that. Not as much wave stuff as I used to, but I use a lot of UA stuff. And then some boutique companies like Oak Sound, or however you pronounce it. I got Gullfoss recently. Sound Toys, of course. I think everyone kind of has that. And I really like the Kush plugins.
I've not messed with those.
Fantastic. Everything. I subscribe to the whole bundle, $100 a year. Done. Yeah. Doesn't have a ton of plugins in there, but almost everything he makes is just incredibly useful to me.
All right. I'm going to have to hit you up with some info on that.
Yeah. KUSH. I even have some of their hardware. I have a Clariphonic hardware and I have his tweaker compressor.
Oh, cool. Okay. Man, this is just such a deep, dark hole between here and plug, but it's so fun. It's so fun.
It is, yeah. It is. The UA stuff for me is when UA is what got me out of mixing outside the box.
I do love
real for my spring reverb or whatever, but most of the time I can get it done now that I have a ton of the UA stuff. That's what got me over the top.
I love my UA stuff. I was, I picked kind of my meat and potato stuff that I use frequently, and I tend to max it out pretty quickly. So I'm looking to probably pick up a satellite or something else here soon because I'm using them more and more frequently. But man, their stuff is just it's expensive, but damn,
you catch them at the right time on their their sales. It's not as bad as it used to be.
True.
But yeah, I just love, like, it's funny because I got Empirical Labs plug-in version of the distressor.
Yeah.
We have two real distressors.
Real.
Yeah, we shouldn't say real anymore. Two hardware distressors. And then I got the Empirical Labs plug-in, and I just, I hope I'm not pissing anyone off, but I really didn't like it at all. I very much disliked it. And then, because I thought, well, they made the hardware one. Of course, their plugin's going to be the most true to the hardware.
Yeah.
And then I got someone said, you should get the UA one. It's better. And I'm like, well, that doesn't make any sense. But I got it. And it was like, well, I still use my hardware distressors.
Yeah.
But I ain't going to buy any more of them.
No.
Because the UA one is unbelievable. So the other thing I think, like, I don't know, everyone's doing this now. I put more mojo on the way in as I record, and I'm much more confident and liberal with my EQ and compression on the way in, because I want to mojo it up as much as I can, saturation too. And then by the time I'm done editing and I'm ready to mix, there's not as much to do.
And that's what's cool with the UA stuff, is that they have that where you can do it to tape now with the plugins, which is, I think, that's just like, you want to use your distressor to tape, or use your Neve EQ to tape, or it's just kind of like, yes, I do. Yeah. So now you don't have to have an actual hardware version. You got however many plugin versions you want, and you could have a Neve across your entire kit, EQing, compressing, and all that other shenanigans.
And it actually works.
And it works. And it sounds awesome. Yeah. It's crazy. Well, sir, man, I'm looking at the time. I usually try to keep these to about an hour, and we've gone a little over, which is A-okay, because I always love talking, but I always like to leave the last little segment to allow you to plug anything you want to plug, say anything you want to say, impart us with words of wisdom. Whatever you got, sir, lay it on me. The floor is yours.
To plug, I don't know, I'll plug, since that's my favorite thing about the job I have now. Since I retired from live music 7 years ago, none of my life is trying to get people to do things that they don't want to do. Like come to your show or buy your record. I'm not involved in any kind of promotion whatsoever. I can tell you what I'm working on. I'm working on a new Joyanne Parker record.
Okay.
She's one of the few artists around the Midwest that actually makes a lot of money playing live. She kills it. She has a huge following. And a bunch of other records. Just finished my own record just for the fun of it. Kevin Bowe and the Okima Prophets. The album is called Half Past Never, because I was never going to do another record. First single is out. The video is out. California Sober, January 20th. That single's out on all major platforms. I'll probably throw the album out after this, next February. And I've spent a lot of time in Pittsburgh working with this rock band called the Stonesy rock band called Ghost Towns.
Okay.
And they actually have been on tour opening for the Rolling Stones a bunch for the last year. They're awesome and really fun to work with. And have a single coming out in just probably a month at the most, on this young British singer, 18-year-old girl named Courtney Hadwin.
Is she the one? She's the one from America's Got Got Talent. She's awesome.
She's amazing.
Yes.
She's amazing. And she's been through the wars with the music business, and now she's finally got rid of everything except for me, luckily. And we write together and, produce we're just 50-50 partners on these things. It's totally indie. And her first single, finally, at the age of 18, is coming out. And it's about a month, and it's called Breakable. And cool. She is an amazing singer.
Oh, God. I remember the first time I heard her, I was like, that came out of that?
Yeah. So we have a few songs written that we're going to release as singles, maybe one a month for the next few months, and
that's awesome.
Write some more. So that's pretty fun.
Very cool. Oh man, I envy your musical life and endeavors, and I aspire to do what you do, sir. It's
just remember, Chad, I'm only telling you about the good parts.
Well, true.
You know what I mean? People look at my Facebook and say, "Oh my God, that's awesome." It's just like, yeah.
Still, awesome. But I mean, even you have to admit, looking back, looking at it now, you've got a pretty sweet career with what you've accomplished. Yeah,
I'm very, very grateful. But I also look back and think of things that I could have done so much smarter and better. But I guess that's an age thing. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I look a little weird, but I have a little more money and I'm a little smarter.
Story of my life? No. But I was, in all sincerity, Kevin, I learned so much from you as a producer and engineer and songwriter that, I was very fortunate enough to be surrounded by great people at IPR, but you in particular really, and I think a lot of it was that time spent together when I was your coffee boy in Master Mix. But
you're an engineer. We were a pretty good team.
I think so too.
We put on a pretty good show for those kids.
We did. We knew just enough to be dangerous, but not enough to be effective. No, just kidding. But no, what have taught me over the years has been just phenomenal and definitely craft the way I am. And I'm endlessly grateful for what you have done and your friendship and you as a person. And so just thank you, Kevin. I appreciate you and you're a rock star.
But remember, never forget. Remember that one kid we had who smelled so bad? Remember that kid?
Not forget.
Oh, I wonder what he's doing now. God bless him.
Oh, showering, hopefully.
Oh, vicious, but true.
This is how about true. So, all right, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, friends out there, thank you for tuning in. I appreciate you. Do you have something? Or are you just raising the pinky for fun?
Just raising the pinky.
Just raising the pinky.
It's for closure.
Closure. I like it. What was I going to say? Oh, thanks for tuning in. I hope you like this podcast. More to come. Take it easy. If it's easy, take it twice. Keep it nice. And I will catch y'all on the flip side. Bye-bye.
Bye.